Hello, my name is Michelle Watson, and this is my testimony. My family has many supernatural touchpoints that go back through several generations. We have a bit of witchcraft, astrology, spirits, ghosts, and various other things of that nature. I grew up hearing these stories, and they intrigued me, entertained me, but at the same time, they scared me. Looking back, I can say that the blessing of it was that I never doubted the spiritual world, because I knew my family had, in some way, always been in contact with things they couldn't explain. I grew up in a house that had some children's Bibles and other things. My father was Catholic, my mother was Protestant, but neither of them went to church since they didn't agree. There were prayers, but I treated God like a genie. I didn't know how to address him, didn't understand Jesus' role or what the Holy Spirit represented. I only knew there was a God up there, a demon down below, who had lost some battle and was making our lives a nightmare. I loved the horror and mystery of it all for some reason. Even though I knew the demon's side was losing, I loved watching horror movies, loved hearing stories about them since I was little. Even if they scared me, I found it exciting to watch so that next time, I would know what to expect. That was my first experience with control, the desire to control my reaction, to stay calm, collected, composed, as if I had everything under control. At the same time, I felt a loneliness and depression I couldn't explain. I had two parents who loved me. I had friends who cared, but I couldn't understand this loneliness. I sank deeper and deeper into horror films because, just like anxiety, I felt I needed something more terrifying to satisfy me. On one hand, I was convinced that finding the right guy would solve my loneliness because, like any child, I saw TV, video games, and books as an escape. I wanted to be part of something bigger, wanted to be on the winning side, but I didn't know how. Life seemed so monotonous and simple, and I didn't have access to the stories I grew up hearing. I didn't know what to do but live with the struggles of my daily life, with a loneliness I couldn't explain, anxious about everything, wanting to please people, prove my worth. I was convinced that, to win the right guy, I needed to be perfect, have everything in place, as if it were something natural for a 9 or 10-year-old child. This obsession to escape these feelings led me to develop a disorder called trichotillomania, a compulsion to pull out one's own hair, which comes with anxiety. Fortunately, it only affected my eyebrows. It was so bad that I practically had no eyebrows, which made me get teased at school. Sometimes, I would even make fun of another student to get a break from being teased. I still had friends, but it wasn't enough. Now, as the years went by, I started to notice that the boys began to notice me. But at the same time, the guys I liked were never interested in me. It was always the opposite. The guys I didn't notice were noticing me. And once again, I felt rejected, frustrated, thinking that if the guys I liked didn't want me, then I wasn't good enough. I remember praying to God as if he were a genie saying, "Please make them like me," but it never worked. And I wondered, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not good enough? I have friends, my parents like me. What am I doing wrong? When I was 12, my parents separated. At that time, I still saw my father almost every day, but I lived with my mother. I didn't realize how much this affected me, but it only reinforced the idea that I needed to have a better relationship than my parents. My relationship had to be stronger, more well-structured. It had to be better than my parents. I had to be better, without the flaws I saw in myself and my parents. The pressure only grew. In adolescence, you start to act like you have everything under control, as if you are someone who really knows what they're doing. At school, you change, you don't know what you're saying, you try to impress people, you try to figure out who you are, try to get good grades and balance it all. I had nothing figured out, but I still tried to give the impression that I did. And deep down, I was dealing with something hard to hide. It was like carrying around a shame I couldn't escape. At the same time, I tried to justify it. Well, I know that virginity is important. My parents taught me that, and it's not something to give to just anyone. I thought that if I kept it, I'd be protected until I found the right person for me. I tried to control what I felt and sought an escape in things that gave me momentary pleasure. But in the end, that feeling of guilt and shame always came. I felt isolated, thinking I was the only one going through that. I went through school, graduated, and entered college, which seemed like another achievement, another thing that would give me the sense that I had everything figured out. Now, I was going to be around other people who also had everything figured out. But all along, I didn't realize that, in reality, I hadn't figured anything out. I was lost. So, I went to college, and there, more rejection. Now, everything was more chaotic because there were so many people on campus, and the emotions were more intense since everyone was trying to find themselves, figure out who they really were. And I, as always, tried to improve my resume to make it look like I had everything in order. At the same time, I started to realize that all the media I turned to for escaping my depression wasn't helping at all. I watched movies, read books, but things were getting darker and darker. The music videos were getting weirder, and I asked myself, what's going on? Why is the world getting worse? I thought we would improve, that the education we all have would make us more aware that we would value women. Why instead are they being devalued more? It was then that I started to realize how much occultism and the spiritual world were infiltrating everything, how people were getting involved in it and using it as inspiration for things I was trying to consume. This scared me, made me feel even more out of control, because now it wasn't just about improving myself, but a whole world starting to lose its way. I began trying to take more control. Whenever I saw a big problem, I would quickly try to find a way to regain control. I remember starting to look for horoscopes in the school newspaper, and I noticed that, somehow, they aligned with my day. Of course, they were so generic that you could interpret them in many ways, but it led me to dive deeper into astrology. I wanted to know where my sun was, my sign, what the planets were doing. I started getting more into it, looking for answers about who I was, what horoscopes and zodiacs from different cultures said about me, and I also began trying to understand more about the people around me. I was so obsessed and trapped in my own mind because I wanted so badly to fix myself. I saw how messy I was and played this game with everyone around me, saying, "Don't worry, I've got it all under control, you can trust me." But in reality, I couldn't follow any of that advice. I started spending a lot of money on astrology books and, at the same time, was afraid of occultism. So I started looking for ways to protect myself, like crystals and other practices. Everything was starting to get more confusing. And then, another relationship came up, but it always failed quickly or in a messy way. Either I realized I wasn't being treated the way I wanted, and I felt disappointed. And all of this made me very bitter. I was so frustrated because whenever I liked someone, if they got close, it seemed like they only wanted something superficial and didn't really see me. I felt like that's all they wanted, just that. And they felt so good about it, could leave feeling empowered, while I felt like an idiot. So, at the beginning of my last year in college, I decided to make a list. After all, I controlled lists, right? I wrote down all the guys I thought were cute, who maybe, if I spent more time with them, I would end up liking. But instead of that, I decided to get involved with them. Of course, I was still the girl who watched pornography, so I didn't go all the way to having sex, but I would go up to a certain point and then just leave. Maybe they thought they would get more, maybe they thought they secretly liked me, and that in the end, I would stay with them. But no, I would just leave. I was doing with them what the other guys had done to me before, even though those specific guys hadn't treated me that way. I was treating them the same way I had felt treated before. In the end, I got all the guys I wanted, but it brought me the greatest shame, the greatest embarrassment, because when I just offered my body, I got all the guys I liked. But if I tried to get to know them for real, treat them as human beings, none of them wanted that. That's what broke me the most because I confirmed a pattern with 8 guys in 3 weeks. I felt like a superstar on one hand, and on the other hand, I felt empty. And after all that, in the end, I left with herpes. And then I realized that now I was the lost one, with nothing to offer but that. It was the most humiliating and pathetic thing that ever happened to me. So, at the beginning of my last year, when you're supposed to feel on top of the world, I felt like an idiot. I was doing everything right, looking for a good job, checking all the boxes, and yet I felt like a complete failure. I had done all the steps, done astrology to find myself, to learn more about who I was, but still, there I was, the same person who had done all that to herself. It wasn't a guy who made me feel this way, it was me, when I finally decided to act that way. In one of those moments, one of my best friends, one of my best guy friends, decided to take me to the house of a professor who was training him to learn how to control his energy. So he took me to the house of a witch. She seemed like an ordinary person, someone you'd see in any supermarket. No one would guess she was a witch. I didn't know what to expect when I entered there. I was already feeling embarrassed, like I was out of control. And then, the witch, who seemed like an ordinary person, welcomed me and offered to give me power, any kind of power she knew how to manipulate. I didn't dive too deep into it because I was only there for one night. But while I was there, I thought, you've got to be kidding me. I know that spirits are real. I know demons exist. I know there's a God up there who can deal with them, but this woman isn't a witch. She's just an eccentric, crazy lady. Why are you wasting your time with her? She started guiding me through the house, telling me to stand at a PowerPoint and all that stuff. I was just going along because I wanted to leave. It was the strangest and most uncomfortable thing I'd ever experienced. I didn't want to laugh at her, but I felt uneasy. Then, she made me sit on the couch and said, "Fight me." I thought she was going to try to attack me or something like that, but she just put her hand on my chest, and in my head, all I was thinking was, what is this woman doing? She's crazy. Suddenly, I felt an intense heat, a feeling of warmth radiating from my chest. My heart started beating faster, like I was scared or had run 3 miles. I didn't know what to do. The only thing that came to mind was a Stephen King movie about kids who could read minds, like little aliens. And then, all I could picture was a brick wall in my head because I didn't know what to do. This felt real, and I had no idea how to handle it. I was there, trying to stay calm and look like I knew what was going on, but in reality, I didn't know anything. She kept yelling at me to block her, to keep her away, but I couldn't. I was so scared. So I just thought, help me. And then it felt like a door closed and the heat disappeared. My heart slowed down, and I was there, not knowing what happened, not understanding anything. I didn't do anything right. I couldn't take responsibility for that. She was kind. I realized she was like me, wanting to seem in control. But at the same time, she quickly turned the tables to regain control by offering me what she had. I just laughed because I wanted to leave there so badly. I said, "Look, I really have to go. I have class tomorrow, work tomorrow. I need to leave. Do you need a ride?" My friend didn't need one. He said she was going to take him, so I left. And I felt like a loser. I went home for the holidays, and during those weeks, I had a very strange dream. It wasn't pleasant, but it was quite inappropriate. When I woke up, I was groggy, and it felt like the bed was swaying, going back and forth. These are the parts of my story I used to only tell a few people, because they're intimate, invasive, and embarrassing. But these are the things that make people feel alone. And that's why, eventually, I feel like it needs to come out because I don't want anyone to feel as alone as I did at that moment. I couldn't understand what had happened. It was like I was just going through the day normally, like I was going to make breakfast. But in the back of my mind, I knew it wasn't normal. This isn't right. This isn't okay. I didn't know what had happened to me, but something was there. The bed was swaying and I was awake enough to realize it was real. I got up from the bed and it was still swaying. I jumped out and stood there whining, and then everything stopped. Finally, I had my own ghost story to tell, but I still didn't have an explanation, and there was no way out of it. I just thought my life was crazy. I went back to college, and something important happened there. I was starting to learn about God, that God up there, and I realized He was the answer. But that required a lot of work, and I wasn't ready for it. I started thinking more about God and where all this had come from. Growing up, sometimes I prayed for things, treating God like a genie, but these miracle prayers were answered, and I didn't even say them out loud. It was almost like mercy, like He was saying, "I'm here." I had parents who raised me with the right principles. I had a few Bibles at home. I knew stories like Jonah and the whale. I knew the story, but I didn't understand its meaning. I knew that God could put a man inside a fish or inside an ark or even on a cross, but I didn't understand what that really meant. What I knew is that God was real, and the more I dove into learning about what I feared, the occult, the more I saw that all the other deities could be part of it, except Jesus. And to me, Jesus and God were one and the same. I thought Jesus, the Son of God, is the Christian figure, but He can't be part of this party. You can flip Jesus's cross upside down and now everything's fine. You can twist His words, but Jesus isn't welcome. I started to realize that demons didn't like Jesus. The thing that moved my bed definitely didn't like Jesus. But I thought I needed to read the Bible to be with God. That's what I thought. And it was a lot of work because the only version I remembered from childhood was the King James version, which I hated. I thought, I'll put this off for later. I didn't know there were other versions like the NLT, the NIV, or the ESV. I didn't know there were versions I could actually understand. I knew there were children's books, but I didn't know how to find all of this on my own. I didn't have the confidence for it, didn't think I was smart enough to understand, so I kept putting it aside. But then, in college, I met a guy. He went to Mass every week, only missed once because he got food poisoning, and after that, never missed again. He was an upstanding guy, almost like the perfect guy, you know? And I ended up falling for him. And there I was, falling back into my old pattern. Now, in the back of my mind, I thought, I have herpes. He was a good guy, with the same principles, values, knew God and Jesus. I thought, I can like him. I spent the whole year as his friend, waiting for the right moment. I waited the whole year so I could graduate, and then I talked to him. He wasn't cruel, he was just honest. He wasn't interested that way. And that's when everything came crashing down. I thought, he's the best guy I've ever met and he doesn't want me. I had been so open and honest about who I was and what I had done, and he accepted me as a friend, but that was it. So I went home, trying not to cry while wearing my cap and gown, because I had told him the day before, the moment I was going to cross the stage to get my diploma. I was trying not to cry, trying to get excited about graduation, but at the same time I thought, now what do I do with my life? I graduated, but I don't have a job, I don't have the guy, I don't have anything. I got home that night and cried a lot, that ugly cry, where you don't have the energy to do anything else. And then I went to God, because I always saw him as my genie. I said, God, please never let me fall for anyone again, unless it's the person you have for me. I'm done. I think it was the first time I really gave control to someone voluntarily. I was trying to manipulate, change myself to get what I wanted, but at that moment, I said to God, whom I barely understood, I don't want anyone anymore. If you want me to be alone, that's fine. I don't want to feel this pain in my heart anymore. I don't want to waste time falling for someone again, unless it's the person you've prepared for me. And in that moment, something was etched in my mind, a thought that didn't come from me, that said, you treat me like a genie, but I can be so much more than that. I felt in that instant a mix of hope and shame, because I felt guilty for treating the God of everything like a simple genie. I thought, who am I to do that? I thought that once again, something was wrong with me. But at the same time, I thought, wait, you heard me. You listened to me. So in that moment, I felt like I needed to read the Bible. I was reading about the occult, and a lot of people were talking about the book of Revelation. Many Christians were quoting the Bible to explain everything happening around us, and I kept ignoring that part, thinking it was confusing. My reaction was, the Bible is confusing. I'll just skim through it. But for the first time, I decided to start with Revelation. It took a few days, but I grabbed my laptop and started reading. At the time, I was living with my mom, so I read in secret because she had been praying for me for years, and we argued a lot about religion. I, being proud, thought, she can't know I'm becoming a Christian. She's going to think she was right all along. So I started reading Revelation, using a version annotated by a guy who felt God called him to do that. Each verse had an explanation, sometimes 16 paragraphs or just 5 sentences, but that helped me understand how that verse fit in the context of other parts of the Bible. It took me about 2 weeks to finish reading Revelation, after work, but in the end, thanks to the annotations, I was able to understand what Jesus did for me on the cross. Alone on the couch, I found myself there thinking, I think it's that simple. I think I just need to say it. So, deep down in my heart, in my mind, I just said, I'm sorry, and I want you. And in that moment, I felt so much relief and so much hope. It was as if all the weight had disappeared. I was radiant because I knew I was a mess, but now someone could fix me. Life still seemed the same, nothing had changed, but there was a big difference now, because I knew he could change everything that still hadn't changed. And there was hope. Now it didn't depend on me anymore. I was on the winning team. Now I was part of something bigger, but not in a horror movie kind of way, running to avoid dying, but in a way where I was the daughter of the King of Heaven. This turned my world upside down in a good way, because my world needed to be destroyed, as I had been the one destroying it for so long. I was still trying to build my own empire, thinking I needed to impress someone, even God. I grew up praying things like, Lord, if there's no room in heaven for everyone, let my parents go and I'll go to hell. I didn't understand. I didn't know what I was saying, but at that moment I thought, we can all go. And I got really excited because it seemed so easy, so simple. A few weeks later, I felt convicted because after reading Revelation, I also read Genesis. I read the end and then the beginning, and then I decided to talk to a school friend, the only Christian I knew, who was very firm in his faith, but still friends with everyone. I said, hey, I think I'm a Christian now. What do I do? He told me to read the Gospel of Mark, and he was at seminary, preaching at a church in Connecticut. So my mom and I went to Connecticut, I met the girl he was going to marry, and I attended his sermon, which was the first one I ever heard. The theme was about self-esteem and how it doesn't matter, because it's what God thinks about you, not what you think about yourself. That was exactly what I needed to hear. When I got home, I knew I needed to find a church. So I prayed and Googled and decided to start looking for churches. I went to that first church and felt a little out of place, all dressed up, in heels, a dress and coat, arriving very early, while most people hadn't even arrived yet. Later, I learned that at church, people don't always arrive early, but there I was, and I said, I don't have a Bible, I just thought there would be a pile of them for us sinners who just arrived. But soon they found one for me because I said, I don't have a Bible, but I know how this works. You sit down, open the Bible, and read what they're saying. So they gave me a Bible and I sat down. Someone soon came and sat next to me, and the pastor's wife came over and said, You're going to love my husband. He's not here this week, but you're going to love him. I don't even remember exactly what the sermon was about, but it was about grace. When I got home, I told my mom, Hey, I went to church today. Next week, will you come with me? She had never found a church, and now her daughter, whom she had prayed for 23 years, was inviting her. So she started going. God has done so much in my life, helping me understand what grace is, helping me understand how infinite His love is. It changed everything for me. It allowed me to let go of so many things and put God in the driver's seat of my life repeatedly, and I saw that happening with others too. It's amazing because when I came to Him, I remember one night I was on my knees praying with a mental list of what I wanted in a guy. It was a huge list, almost like a unicorn list. The guy had to have a race car, like anime, have a refined taste, have traveled the world, be mature, be able to build a house. Anyway, I wanted all of that and more. No wonder I couldn't find this guy because I was trying to be everything to please and it wasn't working. So I said, Lord, I'm going to let go of this list. All I want is for Him to love you and make me laugh. And then, at church, about a month later, that guy showed up. He had really cool tattoos on his arms, wore piercings, and there he was, standing, worshiping the Lord. At that moment, I wasn't there to find a guy. I was at church to find Jesus, but he caught my attention. I watched him, doing what he did, worshiping the Lord. A few years went by, focusing on Jesus, because we both had that in common. He was returning to church, and I was going for the first time. But now we're married, and the most amazing thing is that when we were friends, I had already decided in my head that I would be honest with him. So I went over and said, Look, I have herpes. It was something I needed to share to be truthful. He was 18 years older than me, had lived a lot, and I was that girl who had just graduated from college. And he simply replied, Oh, that's a bummer. Sorry about that. And we moved on. Anyway, years later, we got married. And on one of those occasions, I went for an exam and discovered that the herpes had disappeared. God took that away from me. And that's not everyone's story, that's not the point. I'm just saying that, in my case, God took it away from me. There are other things like my pornography addiction that took longer to overcome. It took a lot of intimacy with the Lord, many years, but He took that away from me too. And through our marriage, God took many incredible things away from my husband, things he struggled with, things our family and friends saw happening. Each story is different, and I know people who are still struggling with the same things He helped me overcome. I still have trichotillomania, but now I understand that it's because there's still a lesson to be learned there. And I'm okay with that. I trust God. Now, we have a beautiful daughter. I was going to say baby, because she will always be my baby, but she's already walking, talking, and even doing math, so she's not so little anymore. But looking at all of this, I realized that life is about handing over control to the one who is truly in control. The less I try to control my life, the more I give it to Him. He redeemed the finances I destroyed. He redeemed character flaws in me and in our marriage. The grace He gives me allows me not to lash out at people because of their flaws or put them on a pedestal as if they were perfect. I can see each person as someone who also needs His love. All this mess, everything I went through, and now, if I ask, He even helps me rebuke demons in my dreams. I used to have nightmares, but one night He said, "You should have called on me." So, I started doing that. Now, I wake up and realize that by calling on Him, I've finally woken up. Jesus is everything to me, everything worth having. He is the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, my commander, my provider, my liberator, my savior, my best friend. He is my fiancé. He goes before me and behind me, and it's in Him that I rely on every day. Not only do I rely on Him, but He's the reason I can rely on Him. He is the breath of life. And in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He is my God. My favorite verse is John 6:43, and the version I like the most is the NLT, New Living Translation. This verse is in quotes because it's Jesus speaking. Stop complaining about what I said. Jesus was speaking to His disciples, and I think in my life, when I was trying to have control, even now, when I disagree with God, the Creator of all things, who knows everything, has all the power and provision, and provides everything I need, what I need to do is stop complaining about what He said. I need to either do or trust in Him, or let go, or wait, or remain, or depend on Him. Whatever it is that I feel I'm struggling with, I just need to stop complaining about what He said. So what I tell people is, just stop complaining about what He said and try. We're terrible at keeping our own lives in order, so what do you have to lose? I know countless people will see this video, and I'm praying that you feel less alone, less misunderstood, less hopeless, and that you feel that joy I felt that day when I realized there's a way out. Now I ask you, are you tired of trying to control your life? How many times have you felt lost, alone, or even unworthy of something better? Have you stopped to think that you might also be treating God like a genie and not as the Creator He really is? What do you have to lose by trying to trust Him completely? What I've learned, and what I want you to learn too, is that the more we try to control our own lives, the more we push away the solutions God has for us. He already has control, but we need to truly surrender it. And by doing that, you'll find the freedom you've been searching for. It will be challenging, yes, but life with Christ is a journey of transformation, and each step is a step of victory. Now, I want to hear from you. What has been controlling you until now? What are the areas of your life you've been trying to manage on your own? And what do you think about, starting today, handing over those burdens to the One who can do anything? Comment below. I want to know your thoughts and pray for you. If this story has touched you in any way, subscribe to the channel so that together we can continue learning how to live life in a true and transformed way. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos, full of more experiences and tips for your walk with God. I'm here to walk with you, and together we can discover how much He can change our lives in an extraordinary way. God bless you.
A few months after that experience in hell, I was sleeping again, and I had another dream. This time I was driving my car again, but on a different road. While I was driving, I had a car accident, and as soon as the accident happened, the same thing that happened the first time repeated itself. My spirit left my body again, but this time there was no feeling of being pulled down, of falling. As soon as I left my body, I immediately found myself in hell. But now, unlike the first time, I felt an intense heat. The first time I didn't feel heat, flames, or anything like that, but this time I felt such intense heat that it became unbearable.
If you felt moved by this testimony and want to watch this story and more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Here, we share powerful experiences that can transform lives and strengthen faith. Click the subscribe button, activate the notification bell to receive updates, and join our community of faith and hope.